Hello everyone and welcome to our new video. This is Ankit and we are going to start a new series on Prometheus in which we are going to help you prepare for the Prometheus interview related questions. And why I choose Prometheus as our starting series is because I have seen candidates struggling with the Prometheus in the sense that most of you might have worked on the Prometheus by installing it and putting out some monitoring. But when it comes down to the interview and someone is asking for the Prometheus in more detail, that is where I see the candidates have been struggling for a while. Now, this series have been created into multiple parts because Prometheus itself is very big and holds multiple questions which can be asked from a person who is having a detailed Prometheus knowledge, right? So the whole goal of the series is to prepare you for the Prometheus interview questions. Now, if you are someone who hasn't worked much on the Prometheus, you don't need to worry because we are going to create this series in such a way that even the people who have not worked will be gaining the more insight. And all that knowledge will be appearing in the form of question and answers, which helps you for the interview process. And that way you can have a comprehensive knowledge of the Prometheus overall. So this will have multiple parts. So if you have not seen the previous part, I will suggest you to start from the part one itself. And so let's get started. So the very first question is, what is Prometheus and why is it used in DevOps? Okay. Now, Prometheus, as you all know, is an open source tool, and this has been an alerting system which has been originally developed by the SoundCloud in year 2012. Now, this has become a de facto standard because this was adopted by the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, that is CNCF, which has actually developed the EKS as well. Now, actually, it's not they have developed it. The Kubernetes EKS, like Kubernetes, was developed by the Google, and they handed over it to the CNCF, which has been majorly uh, managing and releasing out the newer versions of the Kubernetes as a whole. And that's why the Prometheus is so special because it is managed by the same foundation. Now, because it is managed by the same foundation, it is closely integrated with the Kubernetes. So it's an excellent tool for monitoring your Kubernetes-based resources. But if you're not in Kubernetes, then also Prometheus provides you overall monitoring, which is very, I would say, much more efficient than the traditional tools that we were having in place to monitor. So that's what makes the Prometheus so special. Now, considering the why this Prometheus is so special, we can look into the more details to it because unlike traditional monitoring solutions, I'm talking about Nagios, Zabbix and all, it is built from a modern distributed and cloud native environment. Now, what all these means and how you are going to be using. So you need to remember some key characteristics for this purpose. First one is that it's a time series database. Now, this is very important to understand. What is a time series database and what are the advantages of that? So basically, what time series means is that it's going to store all the metrics in the form of a time series data. That is, all the CPU, memory, everything will be stored on the basis of the time, which it gathers and marks a timestamp so that it allows you to project the data points. Now, based on these data points, you can actually find every metric a name, label, value, and timestamp. Now, this is very critical in the sense that using this data point, we are able to project different graphs and we are able to understand the data points in much more projected way, which helps our understanding because then we are able to see the trends and we are able to analyze the historical data as well. Now, what are some of the monitoring that we can put around it is like CPU. You can see that CPU is getting used around 80%. So you can actually put a selected time period, let's say last 7 days, and then you can see the spikes and see the general trend. So let's say if I'm getting a spike right now of 80%, I can see that it was not previously happening. So this is something of issue which is happening right now. Now, these all can be plotted with the help of Prometheus. So all that data, we are specifically concerning about the data. We are not talking about the graphs here. Majorly, graphs can be plotted with additional tools like Grafana and all. And Prometheus also has some graphing, but it's not that good. But yeah, the major thing for the graphing is the data, and the data is being stored by the Prometheus in the form of a time series database. Okay. Now, another key aspect is how does Prometheus works. So generally, the previous tool used to work on a push-based mechanism, but Prometheus is a bit different in this case because it works on a pull-based model. Okay. Now, what that means is that Prometheus actually scrapes the metrics from the configured target. Now, this is very important that while we used to have like agents which were pushing all this data to the monitoring tool, the Prometheus has a different approach. It actually scrapes the data from the different target points and store it inside its time series database. And that's how basically it works. So it works basically on a pull-based mechanism. And usually you will see that when you are using the Prometheus, you need to expose your metrics, okay, over the endpoints, like it can be your HTTP endpoint where you are going to expose those metrics and that Prometheus is going to scrap them out. Now, when you are scraping the metric, you can define your own regular interval during which the Prometheus will be collecting the data points. Now you can go into very deep monitoring and say, on a very short period, you are going to collect the metrics, but that will increase your data. So you need to be very careful of what metrics retention regular intervals you want to gather. Now, regular intervals being shorter will help you in the sense that it will provide you more detailed monitoring, but at the same time, the data usage will be pretty high. So you need to keep a control on that. And it provides you a centralized control over the data collection, timing, and the frequency. So again, you don't need to go in multiple places and change it out like we used to have in the agents, and you change their going to each server or changing their configuration file. Rather, since it controls everything from a central location, you can just change there. And all the changes that you apply. Let's say today I was collecting it every 15 seconds, and tomorrow I increase to 30 seconds, or let's say 60 seconds. So I can just go into the central server and I change there, and that will change the overall timing and the frequency. So that is again additional benefit which the Prometheus brings in. And now the Prometheus has a multi-dimensional data model. Now what does this mean? So basically, it uses labels to identify and organize your time series. Okay. So whenever you are creating any time series, you can put the labels and you can identify on basis of this. Some metrics can have multiple dimensions. Now, what do you mean by multiple dimensions? So here is an example for you. Like if we are seeing the HTTP request total, okay, we can get for a method get because we are talking about how many HTTP requests came to our web server like that. So there are two important aspects. Whenever we are dealing with the HTTP endpoints, like an application load balancer, there can be multiple handlers. That is, multiple paths can be there on which the request is coming, and each one is getting routed to its own target. So suppose I wanted to get only for the /API/users. Okay, out of multiple paths that we are having, I just wanted to focus on this one. Then actually I'm able to put multiple dimensions. Dimensions like I can put say status 200 and I want a handler on the specific path /API/user. So what it will do is it will show me all the HTTP requests total that was received for this particular path only. So I don't need to, segregate that out in multiple. I can just isolate on the basis of path, and I can monitor each path separately. So when I'm getting an alert, I will be getting the alert for that particular path. Is allowing me to narrowing it down by putting the multiple dimensions. That is how multi-dimension data model works, and that's why Prometheus is helpful in that sense. And that's why we say that it's more of a modern day monitoring system. And because if you try to do it from the other monitoring tools, it's not that easy to put this kind of multi-dimensions over there. Okay. So that's why it allows you to have enable like flexi querying and aggregation across the multiple different dimensions that you might be have. Okay. Now, Prometheus uses what we call as PromQL, that is powerful query language. And this is basically a domain specific. What that means is it's not unlike like Python or Ruby or Groovy, something like that. It's actually specific to Prometheus, and how you are going to query the data from the Prometheus is basis of the PromQL. And that's why it's called as a domain specific language, which allows you to query the time specific data. Okay. And this supports mathematical operations, aggregations, and function. Now, this is very important because you will be dealing with lot of these mathematical operations that you are going to perform in order to get the relevant query, okay, data. So you can query like everything. It has a lot of functions which Prometheus supports. So you will need to apply some form of math to get the relevant data out of it, right? So Prometheus allows you to do all those mathematical operations. You can aggregate all the data and functions. So example is like below you can see. So suppose I get a CPU usage across my server. Okay. Now when I'm seeing the CPU usage, actually I can average it out. That is, I can max, I can use min, I can average. So these are what? These are basically mathematical operations. Similarly, we have rate. Okay. Now rate is pretty important. That is, if I'm dealing something like how many HTTP total requests I have been receiving by my server. Okay. So as a total, it might not make more sense. I can apply a rate function. Then what it will do, it will get the rate at which this HTTP requests are coming over a period of 5 minutes, 15 minutes, and so on. Okay, that will allow me to see how quickly this is increasing, and that will allow me to have a more detailed monitoring. And similarly, suppose if I just wanted to see how many, what is the response time? Okay, so suppose I wanted to see like how many, what is the kind of latency I'm seeing with my web request. Then I can use something called a histogram quantize, and what it will do, it will provide me a 90th or 95th percentile of the HTTP request duration seconds in bucket. Okay, what this means is how many requests are having low latency, and it's fulfilling my 90th percentile, 95th percentile, like that, right, of the response time. So obviously there would be some requests which are having greater latency, but this kind of monitoring helps me track and keep if I'm having some service limits that I need to deliver this kind of performance, then I can easily create that kind of projections using the Prometheus itself. Okay. So lastly, we are going to Prometheus has a built-in alerting. Okay. What that means is that Prometheus comes with an integrated alert manager, that is, which can handle the alert for you. So if there is a breach of a limit, you can put the alert, and alert manager can alert on the basis of this metrics which has been received. And basically it supports the grouping, silencing, and routing of the alert. So you can route it to the different endpoints. We basically can use Slack or even Obsidian, stuff like this. We can send out the alerts to them. So those kind of notifications can be routed to the email, Slack, PagerDuty, webhooks, etc. And you can, it's pretty flexible in that sense. So you can use the built-in alert manager, which comes with the Prometheus for sending out the alert. Now, why Prometheus is so essential? Because it helps in the microservices monitoring excellence. That is, it allows you to have a perfect containerized environment. Okay, that is, you can run it on the Docker, Kubernetes. It allows you to have service discovery functionality. So suppose if I'm pushing out a new service, Prometheus can automatically detect on the basis of the tags that we are associating, and it will automatically discover that service, put a sequence of the alerts which should exist, like CPU memory should exist across the services. So I don't need to go on adding it manually. It will automatically discover and put those kind of, it has that service discovery capabilities built into it. Then you can handle the dynamic scaling and e-commerce services as well. And you can monitor hundreds of microservices simultaneously. So you don't need to worry. It's pretty scalable in that sense. And because eventually why we are using Kubernetes is to scale out. We might be having multiple microservices that we all wanted to monitor all of them. That's where the Prometheus comes into the picture and allows you to manage on the scale. Next is infrastructure observability. Now, there are monitor servers, containers, application, network components, right? So this is pretty like basic to all the applications out there. All of them are running on the containers. All are these applications, and network is an important point. So it allows us to monitor all of them. Okay, and it has extensive ecosystem which has large number of exporters for third-party systems. It is unified across the entire infrastructure stack. That is, you can monitor different resources using the Prometheus itself. It has real-time insights into the system performance and health. You can actually frame your own query. You can plot the graphs, and you can see in real time, because it's almost collecting all these metrics and showing you instantaneously. So suppose if you are doing some deployment, etc., then this kind of real-time monitoring helps you, because it allows for the early detection of some issue that might have occurred after the deployment, and then you can actually take the corrective action within the production systems as well. Now it allows you to have a proactive alerting. That is, it can detect the issues before it impacts your end user. This is very, very important. It should never be a case where your end users are complaining about the issues and you are not aware. So Prometheus is very helpful in that sense. It allows you to implement intelligent alerting and reduces the false alert because it allows you to have different mathematical operations. It's pretty flexible in that sense. So that's why it's called an intelligent alerting. It shows you historical data that helps you identify the pattern and predict problems. So you can store a longer period of time as well. So I will be discussing that later, that over a year also, like data like that we can store within the Prometheus, and we can actually form these deductions from it over the patterns, and we can predict when the problem comes and stuff like this, the normal behavior, right? So all this can be done with the Prometheus. And then we can have integration with the incident management workflows. These are very pretty famous right now because it allows you to optimize your system over a period of time. So there is a general tendency to track the incidents, and Prometheus can integrate with these kind of workflows as well. Now there is a seamless integration. Prometheus allows for seamless integration in the sense that it allows native integration with Kubernetes for service discovery that we already discovered, and the pod networking, pod monitoring, service monitoring. These are things which is built into the Prometheus itself. So you can directly monitor on the basis of service. You can actually monitor all the pods. It is so flexible that you can actually project all the metrics of the pod of a particular application at the same time and see if some pod is behaving differently. This is very essential when you are running over the Kubernetes. You don't have insights. If some problem is coming up, Prometheus will be greatly playing a role over there. So it works perfectly with the Docker container. You can integrate with the different providers like AWS, GCP, Azure, like that. And it has extensive third-party tools ecosystem. So a lot of third-party tools are available which actually work on the Prometheus. It's a cost-effective solution because it's an open source. You don't need to purchase or have some licensing fees. It scales horizontally. What that means is you can keep on adding more servers. If you are having a very, very big environment, generally Prometheus is very good in that sense that even a single monitor or single deployment of the Prometheus should be able to monitor your large infrastructure. But then there are horizontal scaling available as well, which we are going to discuss later. And then it's a community-driven development and support. So you can, it's having a very big community. You can go and openly ask the questions over there. It's an enterprise-grade feature without enterprise pricing. Now, this is the most important thing, right? Because other monitoring tools which are having similar capability will be costing you very heavy. So all these are the really why the Prometheus is essential in your DevOps overall workflow. Now, we are going to discuss one real world benefit for it before we complete this video. So if you talk about the real world benefits, so the first benefit is around the scalability, right? So companies like GitLab, right? GitLab is, again, they have a very big ecosystem, and they use to put all the Git versioning control as well as build and deployments and monitoring. A lot of things are there. So if you see the GitLab, they have used GitLab Monitor, which monitors millions of metrics per second. And if you see the reliability, 99.9% plus uptime for monitoring infrastructure, which is pretty big. So definitely it's going to fit in your ecosystem. Now, whenever you are dealing with the interviews and you're giving these kind of data points, right, it will really help you, the interviewer, to understand your level of understanding, that how deeply you are engaged into the observability, which is playing a key role right now. Now, next is performance. So sub-second query response times even with massive data sets. So if you are having a bigger infrastructure which is having a lot of metrics, Prometheus is pretty robust. It can give you sub-second in query response. This is pretty essential in deployments, and that's what developers are actually looking for. They do not want to wait for a longer period to just get a data set out of when they are running the query, and that's where Prometheus excels. And it has a pretty flexibility, customizable to fit any architecture or use case. Okay, so even if you are running in Kubernetes, it's fine. If you're not running in Kubernetes, Prometheus is an excellent tool. You can implement all the monitoring across your servers, EC2s, or physical servers if you are running in a physical environment. So it's one fit solution for all your infrastructure monitoring requirements. That's why you need to learn Prometheus more and heavily focus on it. So that's all. This video has gone a bit big because we covered a lot of aspects in this single video. So all this is available or directly on my blog, which is unixcloudfusion.in. So if you have not subscribed to our channel, do subscribe. You do not need to take notes of this. These are publicly available. Just visit my blog and you can get all of them over there, so you can easily revise. So don't worry about the data. All the questions that I'm going to put, they will be freely available on my blog for you to go and take a look. All right, that's all for this video. Thank you all.